Today we want to talk to you a little bit about a topic that may come in handy, especially in these times, the global pandemic that we find ourselves in, COVID-19, and it centers around end user protection. My name is Dan Gregory. I'm a senior security architect. I've been with CBI for 17 years, and I am joined by Ryan Swisher. So Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yep, so I'm Ryan Swisher. I've been with the company just over a year. I've been in cybersecurity field of from help desks to DoD agencies to financial and healthcare, and came to CBI to kind of, especially as an MSS provider, I work with all of those fields for one company now.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, we're lucky to have Ryan and others like him right now, especially now. We're taking some time right now to get this video out to give some information to you and your organization that you might find helpful. Again, we're going to be talking about end user protection, what it means to us, and again, how to apply it in a creative way to protect those remote workers, which might be, they find themselves a little bit out there on their own. They need a little more protection. And honestly, what this boils down to is making sure that the users don't expose your organization to any undue harm, especially now. The risk exposure is high. They're operating independently in most cases, so they have to make more decisions on their own. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, about the people side of this, the process side, maybe some of the technology side as well, and some of the partners that we partner with to help address some of those technology challenges. So Ryan, what is it you think of mainly as a challenge for that end user protection right now, again, in the times that we find ourselves in right now? What are some of the bigger challenges we're going to try to address here?
Yes, so with the remote work, everybody likes to have that opportunity, that freedom to work from home. But with that, we're not perfect. So you take your lunchtime, you go read your own personal email from home, or you do something else. Well, now you're susceptible to those malicious attacks if that machine is not protected the same way that it would be if that user was in your office. So the emails, the websites they go to, other activity, some folks are using a shared family machine. So you have to worry about where your kids are going, and now you're exposing your work information to that, as well as controlling what users save down to their local machine. So, they check that email from a client, and now they've got PII or other, critical information that's on that host, and you need to be able to track that and make sure it doesn't leave.
Yeah, no, you bring up a whole myriad of challenges there, Ryan. So you mentioned personal private web browsing, a home shared PC with other users using it, VPN connections or not, maybe the lack thereof, and lots of other things that machine is going to come in contact with. In most cases, I think there's going to be some sort of either work issued or work dedicated machine. But as the weeks go on, and we're all experiencing this right now, the rules break down a little bit. You get a little bit lazy. I know myself. I keep on asking myself, what day is it? I keep on thinking it's Tuesday when it's Wednesday and everything else. And time means nothing anymore. Work starts early in the morning and ends sometime later in the afternoon. The rules break down a little bit, and you get relaxed. So people start to share devices and everything else. So those are individual challenges. Maybe we could break those down. So from a web browsing perspective, let's say I've got my work issue machine I'm talking on right now. My daughter needs to come in. She's at university and nearby. She has to do some work, some homework. It's not something we were prepared to before this, so she has to use my machine. Real world example here, by the way. What are some of the things that the end users can use or do just procedurally? We've got some technology we can throw at this. Maybe we'll bring that up in a little bit, but just best practices. What is it I should be doing and others in a situation where there's a home PC being shared now and it happens to be my work computer?
So the biggest thing with this, and especially with everything is on the internet. You hear IoT devices, the Internet of Things. I myself, I have smart locks, smart lights, and multiple hubs, smart garage doors. The problem is all of those are connected, I would say statistically, to the same network that the users are connecting to for their Wi-Fi. In theory, you should have those separated. Have a guest network, or if it's Wi-Fi, have your 2G and your 5G, one for work, one for your off-network devices. Separate those. Also, everybody can do content filtering. A lot of your ISPs will block some malicious sites, but you can go in very quickly to your basic router when you set this up and say, well, I want to block, these kind of malicious sites. I don't want, port 22 open into my host. Not to mention just keeping the box itself up to date. I think that's the thing where a lot of users might kind of slack off because you're used to getting those pushed down to your desktop or your work machine overnight, when you leave. And now you're possibly responsible for those. So we gotta keep up to date. It's not going to be a perfect solution, but we have to do our best, just like with the the COVID and social distancing. And it's not saying you're not going to get it, but you have to take those precautions. You have to put forth the best effort.
I think, again, great points. So just because we're not in the office anymore or on the network of our organizations where we work, doesn't mean the same rules shouldn't apply. So vulnerability scanning, making sure your machine's patched, it's one of the number one reasons why machines become compromised in the first place. You and I both know that. Configuration must be maintained at all times, including patching. So how do you do that, right? How do you remotely touch all your corporate-owned assets when they're not there, and they haven't been for weeks, and they probably won't be again? As we spoke, you might have heard that buzzer go off. It's important to note that I live in the state of Michigan, and our governor has just extended the stay-at-home to the end of this month officially. So we've got at least another 3 weeks of this minimally, and we probably expect it to go on beyond that. So this continues to push. We need technologies that are going to allow us to maintain that patched level, the configuration monitoring. So let's talk about secure connections you mentioned there, Ryan. I need to connect back in the corporate. A lot of people do. That's where the work is. That's where our data centers are, be they in the cloud or physically on-prem somewhere. So VPN connections, the importance of them, how they work, and then what organizations can do to make sure that the machines, once they connect via VPN, are validated to have certain levels of configuration standards before they're allowed to get on that network.
A VPN is always best. Some sort of secure VPN that you trust, whether it's set up or it's to a node in your cloud. Especially in the age of like the BYOD device, that user is now on your network, but where do you put the controls? Are you monitoring to ensure that machine's not infected, or that it's not scraping data or images, screenshots back off the machine? I mean, if you have the infrastructure for it, it's great. Once the user's on the network, they RDP to a known host. So now that host, is still at your office. You can monitor it. It has all the same controls you would expect. And therefore, no work-related items will be done on the external or the host machine. The cloud is great. I know AWS spins up like an actual workplace environment. So for your users, you can stand up Windows 10, spit those out as users need them. When they're done at the end of the day, those machines are wiped. It's just looking at new ways to get in, but definitely the VPN is the easiest, and making sure you have the logs and the people to monitor that. So I know a lot of folks will, I've got my firewall and I've got, my VPN logs are here, but you can log everything. Unless you have somebody looking at it, you have the right tools to do correlation. So especially myself as a threat hunter and blue team, that's the data I'm looking for. What kind of communications going in and out? What ports are being used? How much data? Is this low and slow kind of attack? So there's a lot of controls I think we need to put in place.
And again, I want to kind of drill onto something you just said. As a threat hunter, how has this fundamentally changed the way that you're looking at and analyzing events that are passing in front of you? So security events 6 months ago versus today, are there certain things that you're starting to see, certain patterns? Have you noticed any different things that you didn't expect as far as things that trigger security events that you wouldn't have thought of before?
There's definitely been an uptick. I'm sure everyone's aware of the COVID-19 themed phishing and mouse spam that's coming out. With that, though, there's a lot of newly registered domains. Even with the Zoom issues, the video conferencing that's coming out now, all these new domains are coming out. People are trying to take advantage of you. For me, I'm seeing a lot more of the personal web use, where sites that would have normally been blocked for, say, gaming or certain add-ons to your Chrome browser, those aren't being blocked now. And that's just, they're still getting that web traffic, but the controls aren't on that external machine to then work at the host level. So we're seeing a lot of that just seems to be a lot more web-based attacks, honestly. And then you have the problem with users getting data. Even though things are stored in the cloud, there are controls missing, right? So if you have SharePoint or your Office 365, it's not just a computer anymore, it's your phone, your Teams chat. You can send and share files there, email from the phone. So all those files are now there, and then you're opened up to a whole new wide, range of things, such as malicious apps, on your Android store. Just because they're there doesn't mean that they're secure.
Yeah, exactly, especially in the Android stores, right? So taking it to the next topic of discussion here real quick, and before we kind of start wrapping up, is once users do come in contact with the information now, or before traditionally they would be in an office setting, most of them anyway, or they would connect in virtually, and they would work virtually in the network space, okay? And the files would generally stay on-prem, but a lot of times now I know that the data is actually being pulled back to be worked on offline, locally in these home networks and such, or remote locations. Things that we can do to protect what the users are doing to the data once they do come in contact with it. Of course, I'm talking about the prevention of the loss of intellectual property or damage to the organization's brand or reputation online because of something that somebody did inadvertently, in most cases, but in some cases maliciously, sharing data and exfiltrating it in a way that it's not supposed to be. So can you talk about or comment on the importance of data loss prevention, especially now?
Definitely when it comes down to these hosts, it's having, majority of the time, it's going to be some sort of endpoint agent, which, you've got multiple players out there. If you're looking at Semantic DLP, a ForcePoint, if you're looking at CrowdStrike for that process execution, it's all about monitoring those individual endpoints and where your data is going. As far as controls, I know there's stuff built into Office 365 from a data loss prevention. Maybe you don't have one of the big players in the space. You can still adjust those settings, monitor what websites a user can go to. Make sure you're blocking any unnecessary ports or activity that's on that firewall once they're in to your network from a VPN. Limiting exposure. So just simple controls. The whole purpose of Office 365 in the cloud was that you had your data and you could work on your Office apps from the web browser in that cloud session. There was never a need to really bring that data back down to your desktop. There's no longer, Word running on your machine. But most folks don't turn on the controls that disable you from saving those documents down.
Right. Yeah. I'll admit it. I'm guilty of it. Sometimes it's nice to be able to work offline on a plane when I'm traveling, when I know I'm not going to have internet connection on a local document. So even I find myself falling into that trap because of convenience. We're all creatures of habit. I just want to kind of wrap up a few things here, and there's a lot of topics and other things, but I want to bring some of the partners discussion in here. So we've mentioned a few along the way. For data loss prevention, the SD-WAN, there's the ForcePoints, there's Fortinets for VPNs. You mentioned, the CrowdStrikes for endpoint security, and the list goes on and on. But essentially what it is there's many options. We, CBI, are here to help you guys kind of navigate through what's important to you, what you might need, what you would benefit from, and things that can kind of wait. So kind of helping you prioritize where the pain is and addressing that very quickly. In most cases, it can be done very quickly, either with what you have already creatively, or introducing something new that's lightweight and rapidly deployed to make a significant impact. We're going to get through this, but only if we kind of help each other out. So that's kind of what we're doing here. So please feel free to reach out to Ryan, his threat hunting team, years and years of experience there, worth tapping into. Free consultations. We're always happy to get on a phone call virtually with you guys and talk to you about it and help your organizations. If you happen to have found this video on our remote access page, you can read on to learn more about how CBI can leverage these technologies to help you defend your team, your customers, and your data. Or just fill out the contact form at the end of the video to get in touch with us and learn more about how we can help you via one of our assessments. As always, you guys can find us at cbisecure.com, or you can follow us on social media, or you can email us at help@cbisecure.com. Also, our 800 number is 800-747-8585, and that's 24/7. Thanks. Be healthy, everybody.